Konnichiwa, everybody. This is not just any book club, bookends.
The show
We
not
are
about books.
doing the show not about books. We're doing Japanese month, essentially, Japanese lit, uh, which means for the movie, we have to do a Japanese movie. And the best or most famous Japanese movies are often anime. So we've done an anime movie from Studio. Is it Ghibli or Ghibli? Is it
Ghibli.
Ghibli? Ghibli. Um, you might have heard of it. It may or may not be probably the most famous anime movie to come out of Japan. It's called Spirited Away.
So excited.
Yeah, directed by
I
Hayao Miyazaki. What a guy.
I am the only one who this is my first time seeing it, and I came away with a unique take, which we'll get to later.
Yeah. If you don't know what this is, we're usually
my
a
God.
book club. I know we're bringing this back. We always bring it up back, but well, we're a book club that likes to explore different topics each month. Right now, September 2021, it is Japanese fiction. Of course, we're doing Spirited Away, and we all decided to do this movie because we just have an appreciation for the culture. I'm Justin, and
Pierce.
Emma.
yeah,
And-
and yeah, and yeah, we're gonna discuss this movie, discuss the themes, the nuances. And if you want to get caught up with all of us, follow us at Not Just Any Pod on Twitter.com, where I occasionally tweet a meme. Maybe we may tweet 2 memes this month. I don't know. I've been slacking, but the show must go on. Anyways, let's do a summary of this movie.
Say, who wants to do a summary of the movie?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
bad with summaries, man.
I'll go through it. This is my first time watching it. Let's go. Here we go.
Okay.
Woo.
So the main character, Chihiro, she's moving to a new town with her parents. She's gonna go to a brand new school and everything. And they're on the road. That's where we open. They're on the road. They're making their way. Their parents are like, "Hey, you're gonna miss it. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be great. You're gonna be great in the new town. It's gonna be awesome." And then they pull. They take a turn, and they come across what appears to be a tunnel. But this tunnel is weird. It's not like big enough for a car. So they get out and they're like, "Oh, let's go exploring." And Chihiro, the main character, is like, "Nah, that place looks creepy. Let's not." And then her parents do it anyway.
Chads.
And then they come out on the other side, and it is it's a theme park that apparently there were a lot of theme parks built in the 90s in Japan, and some of them were abandoned. I imagine that's a real thing. Maybe it's not.
It was.
It was, yes. So they're there for a while, and it feels like there's people there, but like you don't see anybody. And then they come across just fresh food laid out, and they're like, "Oh, we'll eat, we'll pay later, because there's nobody here. Might as well not let this food go to waste." But Chihiro's like, "No, why are we eating other people's food?" And her parents don't listen at all to her at all in any way, and they
She has
just
a lot
start
of unease.
chowing down. Um, and then what is it? She like walks away for a minute or two, or is it that it starts to get dark,
Yeah,
so she leaves?
it gets a little dark, I think. And then she's like paying attention to the building, and I think I'm
Yeah,
gonna get into that later because there's different language things on the
she
building.
she um she starts like walking around, and it's starting to get dark, and then she comes across this bridge, and out comes a young boy, um or well, not a young boy, but a little bit older than her, not much older than her, I think. And he comes out and he's like, "What are you doing here? Leave before the sun goes down and the lights come on, otherwise you won't be able to." And then she tries to go and get her parents, but she returns and they've turned into pigs, and they're still pigging out. Um, and then she starts to see all these like spirits and stuff around her. She's running around, she's scared. Eventually, she She tries to get out, and it's no longer ground between the theme park and the tunnel they came in on. It's now water. Um, we find out later she's entered the spirit world at this point. And so she's scared. She like ducks into a corner, and then the boy comes out and he's like, "Oh, don't worry. Here, eat this. Like, it won't turn you into a pig." She does. So she doesn't turn into a spirit. Essentially, that's what he gave her. And then he's like, "Here, I'll help you. I'll help you. Let me get you a job so that way, you don't get attacked or whatever." So he starts taking her over there. I'm gonna kind of speed along a little bit. I've been giving too many details. He takes her over there, and then uh, there's all these like spirits and different creatures and stuff that look not human. And he tells her to hold her breath, and she does, so that way they don't know that she's human somehow. And then she can't hold her breath for any longer, and one of them realizes it. And then the boy, Haku, he distracts them, and then she runs, and he's like, "Go find this person, and she'll help you." Um, or no, wait, he tells her to go down to the basement to try and get a job, the like furnace
Hmm.
room.
To
Uh,
the she gave
the
him the
guy,
name.
the guy with
That
four
guy.
arms.
Yeah.
The spider guy.
I need
Yeah.
to look up his name.
He might have had even more arms, but either way, she gets down there and she's like, "Hey, can I have a job?" And he's like, "No. Uh, the only thing that needs to get done down here is coal needs to get thrown in the fire, and I already have these little soot living creatures to do it." Um, and then another woman comes down,
Lynn.
a young woman, Lynn. Yes, she comes
And
down and she's like, "What? A human?" And the spider guy, is like, "Hey, take her upstairs, get her a job. She wants a job." And she's like, "Fine, whatever." So she takes Chihiro upstairs. Uh, Hijinks ensue, but Chihiro makes it there. Um, and she gets a job from it's Zaniba, right?
I know,
Um,
Yubaba.
oh, right, you Zaniba's the twin sister.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's after, like, persisting and persisting, and she can't actually refuse someone who asks for a job. It's like a whole thing.
okay. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go faster
Okay.
now.
Faster, faster.
Um, Essentially, she gets a job from her, and it's to like clean the like
Bathhouse.
bathhouse stuff. She gets into a situation on her first day when she's cleaning the dirtiest tub, that this like filthy spirit comes in, and she cleans him. This an important detail: a spirit of some kind tries to give her a bunch of little tickets to help clear out and clean out um the bath thing. And uh she doesn't take them from him, and then he disappears and leaves them on the ground. um and so she is able to um clean up this really filthy spirit that comes in. And it ends up that it's like a very wealthy spirit, but nobody knew that because he was covered in like mud and gross stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and then she's like the hero for the night, and Saki on the house for everybody because she made everyone so much money. Um, and then overnight, uh, the spirit that tried to give her those bathhouse cards realizes that the people in the bathhouse like money and gold, so he starts trying to give people gold, and whenever they take it directly out of his hands, he eats them. um, so he eats the first one, and then he like finds a voice. I guess he like steals the voice of whoever he eats, or somehow. um, and so he's like, "Oh, go wake everyone up. I want a bath and I have lots of money to spend." And he's like giving them gold for, bathing him and feeding him and stuff. And um Chihiro is the only one who doesn't wake up to do that. But eventually she gets up and she's just kind of like, I don't really want to do that. Um, and then it's at this point that she like goes upstairs and she sees that Haku, who has disappeared for a while, is being chased by paper things that are cutting him, and he's really hurt. And then he comes into there's like a whole scene where he ends up coming in through the window, and then he goes up into like the high tower where Yubaba, her office is. Um, and so she has to make her way up there, but in the meantime, she runs into the like no face spirit that's eating people, and it tries to give her gold because it's been working with everyone else, and it wants to eat her for some reason, and she still doesn't take it because she's more worried about Haku. She eventually gets upstairs, and essentially we find out that Haku was stealing from Yubaba's twin sister, Zaniba. He stole a little pendant, and Zaniba sent those paper things after him to try and like get it back and kill him. Um, and some stuff ensues with like the magic related to. I'm trying to speed us along.
Yeah, okay.
Some stuff ensues with like the paper related to like magic that was cast on it by Zaniba. Um, and then some people are turned into animals and stuff. And then Chihiro and Haku, in his dragon form, fall into a pit, and they barely get out of it. And they both like fly into the boiler room through like some vents and stuff as they're like falling into the pit. They get out of there, and Haku is not good. Um, So Chihiro kind of like hugs him for a second, and then he spits out this black slug thing, this little black goo, and Chihiro squashes it, and then she's like, and then the spider guy is like, you need to go here and do this in order to get this curse lifted, to talk to this woman, talk to the woman who cast it, and return the thing that was stolen. And he's like, here's a train ticket to go do that. Um, so she goes on her way out. She's like, Haku, you'll pull through. Don't worry about it. That's not her exact words, but whatever. Um, and, uh, and then she goes. She gets on the train. The No Face it chases her down. She gets into a confrontation with him because he wants her to take something from him. And he chases her down. She feeds him something that will transform him back into a more normal state that she was going to give to her parents.
It makes him,
But
like, regurgitate everything.
you're right, yeah. And he kind of returns to his normal spirit state rather than what he was after he had eaten everything. Um, and then he follows her out to the train. She gets on the train with her, and now he's like seemingly nice again, like he seemed to be at the beginning. Um, and then they get on the train. This is, if you've ever seen pictures of this movie, you've almost certainly seen the picture of the two of them sitting next to each other on the train. I feel like that's the only thing I've ever seen about this movie before I watched it. Um,
You went in this
and
completely blind then, right?
I did. That was the only thing I knew was that they get on a train at some point. Um, and that there's a spirit on the train with her. That's literally all I knew. So they get to the place where Zaniba lives, and they talk to her, and she finds out that the slug was not part of the curse. It was actually something that Yubaba gave to Haku in order to control him, and that the curse had dissipated.
Hmm.
She doesn't find out right then, but we know that the curse dissipated because of love that Chihiro had for Haku. I think we already know that at this point, at least somewhat. Um, and then as she's leaving, the No Face spirit stays behind, but comes. Haku wakes up, and he goes up to Yubaba, and he's like, "Hey, let her go." Let her go, please. And Yubaba is essentially like, no. And then he's like, but do it. And then she's like, all right, but one last challenge for her. And then I'll let her go if she passes. Uh, I don't know why she did it, but apparently. Um, and then Chihiro comes back um, with Haku because Haku goes to get her from the Zaniba's place. Um,
You're
and then
going a
she,
little out of order.
No, this is the very end.
yeah, because he wakes up and then I said that she left, but I forgot that
Yeah.
it basically happens that like she gets there and then I think he wakes up and then we're shown like him talking to Yubaba and then he's there and then she leaves with him.
Hmm.
Um, but even it might be a little bit out of order, but all of this happens around the same time. But on the way back, she tells him his real name. He's the spirit of the Kohaku River. Um,
Good scene.
he like there's this touching moment where he like turns back into his human form from his dragon form, and he's like, "Thank you, that's amazing. Like I now know my name." Um, he's like self-actualized is the way that I put it when I was talking about this movie before.
Mm.
Um, and then they fly back together. They get back, and Yubaba has set up the challenge. It's, hey, which of these pigs are your mom and dad? And if you get it right, then I'll let you go. And the trick is none of them are.
No
And
way.
Whoa.
Chihiro knows that, and so she gets away, and everyone is happy for her except for Yubaba. But there seems to be a twinge of like of sympathy for that Yubaba feels in this scene. I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yubaba's baby. Remember she like he turns into back into baby and
yeah,
he's like, please, she's my friend, and that's another
yeah.
reason why she was like, okay.
I was gonna say we bring that up later because I didn't mention the baby before in the plot summary, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
another reason. Um, and then she gets to leave with her parents, and Haku is essentially like, "I'll be okay. I'm not. I don't have anywhere to go to leave, but I'll stay, and I'm gonna put my foot down essentially and be like who I am instead of just being Yubaba's henchman." And he's like, "Your parents are waiting for you at the precipice at the tunnel, um, and you just can't look back. You can leave. You're free to go. Don't look back. You're not you can't look back."
Yeah, because like
Um,
you'll be trapped here if you do.
yeah, right. And then she gets back with her parents. She almost looks back, and then she doesn't. Um,
Hmm.
and then they go back to the car. To me, it seems like it's been many years. Like there's more trees. It looks like there's
Yeah.
thicker
Like yeah.
covering.
They tried
And there's
to
like
they well
there's
yeah they tried to make it. They tried to imply it that like it did maybe it didn't happen, but totally like actually did happen because the dust in them. There are more trees and the
Yeah,
and
cars
then
the
there's
totally.
plants growing
it's
on the car.
it's clear that lots of time has passed.
Hmm.
Essentially,
Yeah.
time passes faster, slower in the
And
spirit world. It'll be slower in the spirit world. Um,
yeah.
yeah, it seems because now it's been many years, and then as they're like getting in the car and driving away because the car still works after however much time
No.
of just sitting there. Uh, her mom goes, "Oh, are you worried about school now that we're back on the road?" And she's like, "I think I can handle it."
Yeah.
I've
And
handled
then
Character
worse.
and
growth.
then and then credits roll, and that's the
Yeah.
end of the movie.
And then they do a second book and they don't turn it into a movie.
They
Dang.
don't. Yeah.
Fun facts.
Well, I watched the dub and the sub. The sub first and the dub later. Pierce watched the dub, and Emma is
I've
sub
only watched
pure.
the sub. I've only
I
watched the sub of this movie.
I watched the dub and then went back to listen to the sub for a few particular words to
Hmm.
get like a better meaning, but I have not watched the sub all the way through.
And honestly, I know that there will be some purists here, but I may have preferred the dub just a little bit. Um, I was able to
I
catch all the nuances and the voice acting and inflections.
I
I think I think
I
with
think I think for certain shows and movies, it like dubs are fine. I understand because subs are much easier,
Mhm.
um, because you don't have to fit what they're
Both voice
saying
actors and the
within
mouth
the
movements
like
have to match.
animation time frame. It doesn't have to totally match, but it has to be like you still can't be talking past when
Yeah,
the mouth stop moving.
and
Um,
when that comes into play, you know, sometimes times of silence get
yeah,
over talked. I know that
yeah.
I forgot what show it was, but
The
it was just a show that an anime that I watched, and they were like, you have to listen to sub for this because there's too
yeah.
many like quiet
yeah,
moments.
yeah,
But
and
in this case, in the case of a lot of the studio's films, and in the case of like stuff like Death Note, everything I've heard about it
Death
is that
Note.
the dub is like totally fine to watch. Like it's you don't lose much
by the
in
way, Death Note is
translation
the only
Dub
anime
for
that Pierce has watched.
all the way
Death
through.
Note is probably better.
I have tried other anime, but that's the only one I've watched all the way through.
Same. Oh, yeah, technically, kind of same here. So, yeah,
I've watched quite a few
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, she's more seasoned anime. But I have a firm grasp on the Japanese culture, at least in the modern age, post World War II. I'm very familiar with Akira Kurosawa's works. I've seen Seven Samurai a couple times. Also love Frank Ozu. Tokyo Story is one of my favorite films. So I, ca- I know what the Japanese culture is like and what it's like over there. And I think this still might be my favorite Japanese movie. Well, besides Tokyo Story. Like some in terms of like movies that came out from Japan, this just hits all the beats. It has the best music. Oh my god, that
Oh,
soundtrack,
so good.
so good. Honestly, that might be my favorite part of the movie. Well, second to the animation, but like on a second watch, I just start to notice like how much the music elevates like each scene to like an
Hmm.
emotional climax, and it carries so much emotional weight that it almost becomes like a character in of itself. It like I can't imagine it without the music or without the same composer. I don't know who made the music, but Joe Mamoru Fujisawa, bless you for making this music.
Yeah,
It
it's
makes some
definitely
great
adds
setting
to the
music.
emotion
Yeah.
for sure.
Um it's beautiful, and I listening it to again, watching this movie again, you notice how there's seldom a moment of silence without the music, which which in some movies may be a bad thing because they could use music as like an emotional crux, but here it really acts as an augmentation of the movie, especially with emotional scenes. Um, and honestly, it is also enhanced with a dub. I know that Hayao Miyazaki has said that he prefers people watch his movies in the native language. I think there were some exceptions to that. I don't know what he said about Grave of the Fireflies. I don't think he directed that, but with Porco Rosso, he actually says that he prefers the French dub. I don't know
Hmm.
why, but that's something. Um, and
That's an interesting take because as long as the dub is handled really well, I do think it's probably better to
yeah,
watch it in your native language because I mean I've been deep in language learning recently, and there's a lot of it's so much more than just knowing what is said in a language. Like even as
yeah,
subtitles don't capture it if
exactly.
it's not in your native tongue because it's not it's again it's more than just knowing what was actually said. Like
Yeah,
there's more nuance to it in different languages.
yeah. I'm usually a sub purist, but like I think with Ghibli films, I think are the exception because listening to the dub this time around, I was able to catch a little bit of nuances. Like there was that crying scene, like what is it when Chohiro eats the rice ball? The
Hmm.
sub
Yeah.
version, she just starts crying, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like it didn't really connect with me, but with the dub version, her actually welling up with tears, and then the music swelling up with that, I'm like, he got me. I was like, oh, don't cry, Chihiro, stay strong.
I'm
And yeah,
definitely someone who likes subbed, I think, better
yeah,
when
I
it
know,
comes to anime, for
yeah,
sure. I prefer
but
like it just immerses me.
yeah, but with my experiences both, I honestly, I'm probably gonna watch the sub first, but like for future watches, I'm definitely gonna go with dubs for at least for Ghibli movies. I know controversially, I don't know if it was with this movie, but I know at least with Howl's Moving Castle, um, they would add in like moments of just like music or ambiance to fill in the silence because they didn't expect American audiences to like these pillow shots. I think that's what I
Mm.
know Ozu called them pillow shots, where basically just shots of nothing, like the train scene. Nothing really happens. It's just them chilling out, but it's like the highlight of the movie for me because it's just like a moment of relaxation from all the chaos that happened before.
Mhm.
And for an animated movie to do that, that's aimed maybe directly at children. I don't. Well, it's aimed at all audiences, but it's made to appeal to children.
Mhm.
Ballsy move, but
The thing
Japan.
oh, sorry. The thing about this animation is that it was, like, breaking for, like, the whole
Yeah,
animation world. It won an Oscar, I
yeah. For
believe.
from
It
best animated films, the
Yeah,
only
for best
non-English
exactly.
animated film to do
Mhm.
so.
And it was different from a lot of animation because it was completely hand drawn, like,
Well,
none of it was computer
okay,
generated.
no,
Yeah,
that's
this
wrong.
film was no,
No,
this
there were
No,
some
no, he's not
moments.
saying that. Oh, okay.
There were
no,
some
this
moments that were CGI. What is
I
it?
so
They
I looked it up and I read up on it. So it's more so
oh
I watched some videos about it too. There is moments where they honestly, I don't basically what Miyazaki does is he does his hand-drawn animation and he makes it to where there looks like there's camera movement and camera panning. Um or
Also,
yeah,
would you say it was the
spanning.
first? It was the first what?
non-English animated film to be
No,
received.
no, 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 no. What was your actual statement on it, Emma, about the
Oh,
hand drawing?
Oh, it was a completely hand-drawn film.
mm.
Um
They used
Which was
this.
different from a lot of modern movies that were, like, completely computer generated. Like,
Yeah, but
it was mostly a
this
hand-drawn animated
I
film.
I understand that that's really cool, but like you can't really compare. I don't think you can compare that like as a factor against other movies of the time because we were first. That's when we were like first really getting into completely computer generated movies.
Yeah,
So
Well,
it's like
yeah,
everyone was going in on that because it was a new thing.
thanks
I'm
to the
not saying
story.
that, like, it's not necessarily special, but it was one of those films where people were starting to get into computer generating and, the way he did hand-drawn animation to make it look like there was camera moving, it reminds me so the scene where she's running through
Through the
the, like, walls of flowers,
yeah,
so, like, she's running and it looks like it's, like, going really fast past her. So that, I believe they might have actually used some
yeah,
computer-based stuff, but a lot of it was hand-drawn, in the way they
yeah.
moved the
It
slide
was almost
paper.
entirely hand drawn.
Yeah.
It okay. It wasn't about like ditching com- computer style animation. It was like more like
Yeah.
infusing it just a little bit, like, peppering it in. Um, not to like steal away from the show. It's mainly hand drawn animation, which, as always, it looks beautiful. It's probably still up there with the best animated film I've ever seen.
Mhm.
Um, I would probably contest that, and I rival anybody to think of anything else that could even come close to it. It's a really well made film. Like the imagination on display. Like the world building. I know that Hayao Miyazaki. He plays his cards close to his chest. He doesn't really tell where the influences come from, but you can tell that this is from like Japanese folklore. I'm not very familiar with Japanese folklore, but there's a lot infused in it. Just remixed slightly, so you can't really. He makes it his own, and adapts it for a new
Yeah.
audience.
Many
Um,
of the like, in the film are based off or, like, characters in the film are based off of figures in Japanese folklore. He
um,
does different characters are reflected in that.
hmm,
I don't know too much
yeah,
about that Japanese folklore, but I know he has some parallels.
we're American, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
Yeah, you could speak.
Oh, no, I was just saying that it's very interesting how he, builds, like or culturally, he
Weaves together.
incorporated different cultures, with the language. There's actually some Chinese influence from different characters, which, we
Mm,
can get into in a little bit, and then,
yeah,
he also took the American culture of how to immerse, I think, the audience, which is why it did so well internationally,
yeah,
because he really catered to a lot of people who can enjoy animation.
yeah. Um, Kind of speaking of which, to pivot, Pierce may have a theory about this and what this all means. Before we touch on
You
the
want,
story, I
you
just got to hear this.
you want me to jump on my theory about the the workings underneath Spirited Away?
Yeah, from Pierce's perspective.
Um, so I've been taking a comparative economic systems class at my university,
Ooh.
and my university professor's favorite two economies to compare are the American economy and the Japanese economy. And
Ooh.
his favorite factor to look at when comparing economic systems, is families. What is the family? Um, what is the family like in each system? And we haven't gotten too much into modern economies yet. We're going through like historical economic settings. I think we're about to do feudalism, um, or historical economic systems. But from what he's briefly touched on, from what I understand, is that culturally in America, the family is important, and it has has important factors in life. But by and large, like most people, their family is not important to the actual economic workings of society. If anything, we move away from our parents in order to,
Mm,
um, engage in the economy. Um, I won't get into why that is, but that's just the way it is in the U.S. But in Japan, that's not really the case. The family is viewed as an important part um, of economics, of the economic system. Um, and I really think it's interesting that this film, the focus is definitely, it's definitely a kind of coming of age story. It's a kind of coming of age into an economic system, into a workplace under a system. Um, it's got anti-greed themes. She seems like lost in this new workplace and has to work really hard because the
mm.
boss doesn't like her.
It's
There's lots of like
Kafka-esque.
there's lots of critiques and everything of the Japanese economic system. Um, but I think one important factor that seemed to get brought up quite a bit more uh, than I would have thought, is that different family members came up quite often. And obviously, like, part of the plot focuses around her parents. So discounting that, right? Um, one of the spider guy, he calls himself her like grandfather or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Kamadi
Yeah,
is his name. I looked it
right.
up.
He calls him her grandfather. And then when she goes and meets the twin sister, um
The
Zaniba, uh, she asks her to call her granny, and of course, that's like a term of endearment to call an
Or
older woman
respect.
grandmother. Um, I mean, I feel like that would also be the case in the U.S. If you had a really close family friend and you started calling her grandma, that would also be a term of respect or endearment. Um, but I think the fact that it continuously comes up, and the fact that Lin and Haku seem to take on um, very protective familial sibling roles in her life in the spirit world, and they also look the most similar to her. They're the most human looking
mm,
people, um, in the film, besides the actual humans. Um, I think that an important aspect of the theme of the movie is that family can help bring you out of um, the corruptive aspects of the Japanese economic system that he's critiquing. And it is a type of capitalism, but I'm not saying capitalism because Japanese capitalism is different from American capitalism, which is different from X and Y capitalism. Um, so I think really Miyazaki, right?
Yeah.
Miyazaki. Yeah.
Miyazaki.
Oh, I'm surprised.
He he is critiquing the Japanese economic system. He's critiquing consumer culture. He's
Definitely.
critiquing greed. Um, but I think he's also for a positive aspect of the movie, which there are many, but I think one positive aspect of the movie is that family is able to pull you out of the corruptive aspects of those systems. Um, the um, Zaniba helps pull Chihiro out. Haku obviously helps pull Chihiro out. Lin, I don't. She doesn't help her pull her. She doesn't help pull her out as much, but she definitely protects her in that system, or attempts to.
He's
Um,
supportive of, like,
yeah,
the struggle of it.
right. And then there's also um, it's a I think this is on a different note. But I also think like while he's critiquing it, he's not necessarily um promoting moving to a completely different system. And the reason I say that is because Haku becomes self-actualized. He knows his name and he's like, I'm going to take charge of my life here. I don't have anywhere else to go, so I'm going to make the best of what I of what is here. Um, and he doesn't have to leave the system to do that. Chihiro does. Chihiro has her family to be with, and she's got a place to go, and she does leave the system. But Haku kind of shows that you don't have to
Mm.
in order to be self-actualized,
I mean,
in
I've
order to
got
part of
like
that,
be a
though, is
full person.
Yeah, I've got something to say to that as well.
Mhm.
What is it? Zeniva and what was her sister's name?
Yubaba.
Yubaba. Yeah. Okay. I forgot what the evil one was. Um.
Yubaba is the evil
And it's
one.
Okay. Yeah.
Yubaba.
So Yubaba is this evil capital. From this greedy expletive work leader boss thing. Interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure this has to be an intentional parallel. With her twin sister, Zeniba, who lives on the outside of the system and is actually nice and polite and actually welcomes Chihiro coming in. Do you think you can draw any parallels with that? Um,
Um, yeah, I think like the thing is basically every character has good and bad aspects to it, and when she first gets there, Zuniba isn't totally nice to her. Um, uh, I don't think any character leaves the movie completely unscathed, and I think that's what part of what makes it really good is that every character has good and bad aspects to them, even Chihiro. Um, there are moments that
see,
Chihiro has that are not necessarily like evil, but like not good. Um, uh, I don't think Zaniba is totally nice. Zaniba is actually when she's first portrayed in her like spell paper form, she's portrayed to be like ruthless and mean spirited and not nice.
Mhm.
Um, even though she lives outside of this system that's under Yubaba. Um, and the other reason I say Haku shows that you don't need to leave the system to be self-actualized is because there are other places to go in the spirit world, and he
mm,
doesn't go there. He stays in the bathhouse.
You also have to remember he was a river, in, like, the real world
Right,
and
right,
when
right,
she
right,
was a
right,
child. So, basically, in that, he technically can't even go back to the real world because they built that dam, the river's gone.
right,
So
right.
he died in the
But what
way.
I'm saying is he would have other places to go in the spirit world should he choose
Yeah,
to. We don't
yeah.
see the entire thing. We see that there's like two other places. But I would
Mhm.
imagine between those two places and beyond those two places, there are probably more places that he could go. He doesn't, but he chooses not to. He chooses to return
Yeah.
to the system he was in. He was stuck in. He was being controlled to stay in. But once he's
Mhm.
self-actualized, he doesn't leave either. Even though while he couldn't go back to the real world, he could leave the
Yeah.
actual bathhouse itself.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Um,
Sorry. One more thing before I forget about the family thing. Last thing on the family thing. The baby, the giant baby, Yubaba's baby. Um, he's mean to Chihiro, and to me, he kind of solidifies my theory in my mind because he plays like a really good younger brother role, like baby brother role. Play with me or I'll scream and you'll get
hmm,
in trouble with mom. And then as him and Chihiro like go through things together. He gets turned into a rat or a mouse. Um,
yeah.
as the two of them go through things like that together, um, he gains this respect for her that he didn't have before, and that's kind of what you see in an older and younger sibling situation when the younger sibling is so much younger than the older sibling. Is that there's this like tension between them, and then they grow up together, and there's this kind of
Hmm.
newfound respect from the younger sibling as they see their older sibling go off into the world. um, I think that's, for me, that being modeled here kind of solidifies my theory about the themes and stuff.
That, that was pretty commendable. Was that from a first watch without any external resources, or was that
No,
just
that's, I've actually tried to find other people who also say there's kind of some inklings of what I'm saying, but nobody has anything like in depth like what I've said here that I've seen. Maybe someone does, but in some light research, I haven't seen anything.
first
I
time
think
watch
I think
days?
with the the discussion on family, um, it's a it's a good discussion to have, and I think another part of it, it's not completely family driven because in a way, another part of this movie, greed, is, it is
Hmm.
present. And you also have to think where, Chihiro, she isn't overcome with greed like other people around her,
Yeah.
but there is a sense of I have to protect myself and that kindness. So she's able to respect people, which is how I think she gets close to them as if it's family. But then we also have to think in Japanese culture, calling your elder, grandma, granny, grandfather, that's typical culturally. Just for someone being your elder out of respect, maybe endearment. It doesn't necessarily have to be because you care tremendously for that person. Um, so I think it could go either way, but I do see how you relate that to an entire like kind of family concept in that because that is something that she needs in this film because she's separated from her parents and I think she does connect with people because she's lost and she loses her identity for a bit when Yubaba takes her name and she is now Sen.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of like, I'm not trying to say that the entire movie is just about family. I just think that like there is this kind of underlying message about family relating to the critiques on greed and economics and consumerism. Um, and that directly relates to Japanese culture.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
the family thing. I mean, um, well, both things, obviously,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but the
I just want to say
um,
this movie was written like Japan in the 90s suffered from economic stagnation. And I think this is where the war culture came in. So I'm assuming that Miyazaki grew kind of jaded with it and kind of wrote this movie in response. I'm assuming that's why there's that economic boom, and that's why amusement parks were abandoned after being made, and that's why they were there.
yeah,
So I'm guessing he's sourcing from real life as well.
Mm.
I don't know how much real life there is of his real life influence. I know that he wanted to write this movie about I think his producer's daughter. So there's definitely some real life aspects that he put of himself into the movie. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and with these themes that I know we just talked about, one of the major ones being family, that connects to the power of love, and you see that with any familiar and reactions and relationships that she has, but also the love she carries for Haku, which isn't necessarily love, as in I love you so much I want to like
it's platonic.
marry you. It's like
Yeah,
It's
it's
platonic.
like a respectful love,
Yeah.
because
I
she
sorry.
realizes that she knows him already, and that's
Mm.
why she can trust him so much because he saved her as a child, and now they're meeting again, and she
Yeah,
discovers
the
that.
the word that they use in the Japanese like the original Japanese is
Mhm,
I, which is a profound, respectful love.
mhm,
It's I went back and listened to all of the times that they said love in relation to the relationship between
Damn.
Chihiro and Haku, because I wanted to see if they had used like the familial love once, but
mhm.
it was always just not general love, obviously, but like a profound love
A
for
close
something.
Mm.
connection.
Yeah.
Familial.
Yeah.
Um, they
Um,
do have a word for familial love, but I would imagine I is used probably fairly generally. Because when you type it in, I use the translator that I use for German, which is pretty good. Typically better than
Are,
Google Translate.
are you gonna drop the
Um,
name?
and
maybe later.
uh, yeah, maybe not while I'm in the middle of a train of thought. Um, and I is actually the first word for love that comes up. They give you other options, but I is the first word, which means to me that it is of course a more specific word for love than the word that we English speakers use. But it is also like a word that they would generally use.
Maybe like love
Um,
for a best friend or for a mentor or
right,
something like that.
right, exactly.
Mm.
Um, so it's really basically what I'm trying to say is listening back to that got me nowhere on my theory because the word I is used generally enough that it could mean what I'm saying, and it could also not at all mean what I was saying. So
I think
Well,
along with the theme of family, there's also the theme of the power of words and names, because
identity.
that really
Oh,
identity, of course. So that that really takes place in this
mhm,
entire storyline because she's A, she's trying to find her parents. She learns very early on what her true name is,
mhm,
because Haku reminds her, because she had
yeah.
this slip of paper or something that had her name. And so she's able to know that, like, there's something weird going on. She needs to get her parents. She does have this feeling of protection against or for Haku, and I think that's reciprocated. And then also finding her own sense of self. She's a child, she's 10 years old, and now she's in the
Mm.
workforce. Um,
Yeah.
she's thrown into this adulthood type of world.
Yeah. Um, to kind of add to that, I believe what you said, like it's about preserving your identity in a world that's kind of exploitive. Again, she loses her name after signing on with this dubious contract that makes her
Mhm,
relinquish her identity. But throughout it, she always she's almost like a paragon. Almost to a fault in a way because she always does favors to other people. Like what is it? No Face. She lets it in
mhm,
and kind of wreaks havoc on the bathhouse, but she still goes out of her way to help other people, even at her own risk, like saving Haku, even though she could have died. What is it like?
mhm.
Going on that surprisingly dangerous adventure to like what is it? Running on a pipe
So,
on the edge of the wall. I'm
uh,
like, whoa,
there was there was also the stink spirit, which
yeah,
she was almost entirely the person taking care
yeah,
of
she
it
was
and was just
drowned.
like, "Let's
Yeah,
go." And then she, like, out of that kindness, she gets something from that spirit, and
Yeah,
this is, like, shown
yeah,
throughout the entire thing. It was kindness that brought No Face in, which is
yeah,
why he has a connection to her and why
yeah,
he listens to her more.
yeah. And refusing gold, again, is just her relinquishing greed. Again,
Mhm.
that's her kind of preserving her innocence, and not letting the world like overcome her. And like I think like when she refuses the gold, that was kind of like a karmic test, because I think that was also around the
Mhm.
time when she was trying to find Haku. So
Yeah.
again, trying to preserve her integrity, and obviously it pays off for her because she doesn't get destroyed like everybody else in the bathhouse.
Mhm.
So there's that.
But
Kindness
after,
pays off.
that oh, I'm so sorry.
No, no, no.
Um,
That's might be punctuating my
but,
thoughts.
after she refuses that gold, and how she's able to resist those feelings of greed, because she's a girl on a mission,
Mhm.
And so, after, looking at that, she's also able to not judge these other spirits and people, like, on their greed. She
Mhm.
knows that something happened, partially it's her fault,
Yeah,
and she gives up part of the, thing that could save her parents, to save all these other people. Some
yeah,
of these spirits, she has no idea who they are, and she's able to take on this challenge while also having to take care of Haku, her parents, getting to safety.
yeah,
Um, and I think that's pretty incredible, just her storyline and her coming of age at 10 years
yeah,
old.
yeah.
Um, but she's able to
Also,
get No Face out of there and also regurgitate all the spirits that he ate. And
mm, also, I think my this is because Miyazaki has a track record of basically all his movies making his protagonists just small just young girls, and they almost never. I don't think they've ever had a romance, if I recall correctly.
uh,
I think Howl's Moving
Howl's
Castle was.
Moving Castle. Hmm.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the
Yeah.
exception, but for the most part, like they're just kids. They don't get into relationships, but yeah, I feel like that kind of grounds the film because it just could be anybody. And he specifically tried to make the main character, I think all the main characters, not like too cute, too eye candy ish. It's just like they're just people, and they're not
Mhm.
drawn in a particular way to draw. I do not want to say gays because that's gross.
Attention. They're not
Attention.
drawn
There you
for
go.
attention.
Yeah, they're not meant to be marketed anywhere. It's just it's not to draw away from the animation. Um, so there's also that, and yeah, it's a very subtle coming of age film. Well, the first time I watched it, the second time I watched it, it became very apparent that how much of a
Hmm.
coming of age film this was. But that's besides the point. Again, this also infuses with Miyazaki's politics about like anti-consumerism and being kind of a critique of it. Um, and also, I also think there's a bit of an environmentalism theme to it because
Hmm.
Miyazaki is very, very hard on that. What is it, like? Okay, there's the stink spirit, which there's a thorn in that stink spirit. She pulls it out. It's a bunch of human trash accumulating in that, which
Hmm.
I'm assuming that's Miyazaki just commenting on how we've kind of trashed the world and we probably shouldn't be doing that. And I'm assuming there are some
Yeah.
other examples, but that was the big one. He's very
Also,
very
the dam
vocal about it.
that blocks Haku, or how
Yeah,
he was a river, that also, like, man-made substance that's
yeah,
stopped, you know, part of the earth.
yeah, and probably a bunch of other examples that I am kind of forgetting, but yeah.
I mean,
Also,
environment is a big part in it.
yeah, no, it's huge. Again, this is the guy that did Princess Mononoke, a movie that was entirely about environmentalism, but not black and white. You guys should watch that movie, by the way.
I need to.
Yeah. Um, Also, just to refer back to the coming of age story, I also think this is Miyazaki by having her parents be nameless and essentially almost entirely spending the story as pigs. I
Mhm.
think that's just Miyazaki's way of showing that uh, children could be more innocent and possibly even more morally righteous, possibly better than just adults, because they then succumb to greed or curiosity or just want to steal. So
Yeah,
Her
I feel
parents
like
do have names, though.
they
yeah, they do.
do.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
do.
they do.
I feel like there's definitely a dig at like parenting in general, it feels like
Mhm.
they're unable to listen to her even though she's totally right about how they should not be there and they should leave and
Oh,
Yeah.
they shouldn't have gone in.
She finds
Um,
her voice in this film, you know? She finds how
yeah,
to be
yeah,
independent and, like, confident with herself or in herself, I guess.
yeah.
Um, I also wanted to talk about kind of something that Miyazaki does a lot in his films, and that's a bunch of foreshadowing, and he does it through language, and he does it through like all, it's usually all visualization in his films. He does this, and I did a little research on it because I just thought it was so cool. And this is another thing how he integrated different cultures, and this actually takes and so he breaks down Japanese characters, kind of shortens phrases, but he also takes from um, Chinese characters from mixed, I guess, languages. They have a few
Hmm.
dialects over there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very infused.
but yeah, so he has some of that influence as well. So there are Chinese characters as well in these buildings. And so he mixes it up, but I want to talk about some of the characters and phrases that are on the buildings. Not that I can understand them, but from my search that I've done a
Don't
bit.
butcher the pronunciation.
Well, I'm gonna do the translation of what it is in
Okay.
English because I don't. But one of them is on one of the restaurants, and it translates to bitter, like literally to bitter meat. Which in this case, it also relates to, I think there's another phrase that like requires a personal sacrifice, and I think that sacrifice comes from the parents turning into pigs. um, and also there's another building that has a phrase that translate or the phrase means to lack moral backbone, which could also relate to the parents just like feasting on something that isn't theirs. They didn't have an invitation to do so. Um, and and these things, when you look and watch the film, uh, Chihiro's looking at the buildings. She's looking around. She's feeling nervous at these like weird stone statues and at the buildings. It's a deserted amusement park or town. She sees these characters and these phrases on the buildings. They're really weird. Her father turns down an alleyway and it's framed like on each side, on the left side on the building. It has a character that says heaven, and on the right side, it has a character that translates to devil. Uh, um,
Interesting.
so this is just something that you know, Chihiro, she notices these things. She has this unease. She's like, "Y'all, let's get out of here." um, and there's also I read there are yeah, different characters that foreshadow Pig actually. Like pig under roofing or under the roof, which gives the idea of like pig and family relation. But also what I read with connotation and
Hmm.
being able to connect it to really everything going on. Also death as in grave, so death equaling like grave of it.
Wow.
So that's definitely a daunting foreshadow because death
Yeah.
and all that stuff is definitely leering over her parents. Because Yubaba's
Yeah.
definitely like, "I will go butcher your parents right now. Try me,"
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Because
know?
what is? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which I love how, he integrates different cultures, I mean, from different
Yeah. No,
languages
this
and
movie is an amalgamation of just different mythologies and everything. So
mhm. And the language of it too, and it's all visual and in the animation. And,
yeah,
if you know the language, you're able to point it out.
that's a
But,
layer that we miss, unfortunately.
yeah,
Yeah.
I went back on it because, thinking about it, she's so on like unease.
Hmm.
She's nervous about it. She doesn't like it there, which might be because she already has this connection to the spirit world through Haku from her, like as a young child, right? in the river. Maybe that's part of it, but another part,
Yeah.
she's paying attention, whereas her parents are like,
Yeah.
"Cool, I smell food." Um,
Yeah.
but she's just very perceptive, whereas her parents are very oblivious.
Yeah. That was a good analysis. I mean,
Thanks.
I don't have anything else to add. I mean, I think we covered the the significance of this film at length. We've talked about, I don't know about the influence it's had, but it's certainly had its impact on American culture. I think I don't know if this is true, but like it definitely made anime more well accepted in the West.
Yeah,
Like this
that
was just
is
groundbreaking.
actually precisely what it did. It was one of those things where it was a film that was really accepted internationally. It did very well, in places like America and other countries, which, as you said, made anime more kind of respected and people, um, you know,
Interested in
accepted it as
yeah,
well into the world. It was like kind of groundbreaking for animation at the time.
yeah,
Because I went and I double checked research. It is completely hand drawn. He's just like Miyazaki's just really great at what he does.
mhm,
But that's what really broke that barrier because around that time most people are integrating computer generated. And so he took animation, he put it on the map for Japanese animation. And I mean it was something that you watch it and you're like, wow, it's beautifully done.
yeah. It yeah. Someday I hope to go to Japan and go to the Miyazaki Museum or the Studio
That'd be
Ghibli
so
Museum.
cool.
So
It
cool.
it is uh it is mostly hand drawn.
Yeah, it's like
It's not completely hand drawn. It's mostly
like
Almost
hand
every
drawn.
95%.
source that I said it was
Soft
not
image
computer
3D was
generated.
used.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, soft
I'm,
image 3D, I mean,
but
that's probably
That's
yeah,
computers.
that's
yeah,
computer.
but it
The sources that I'm seeing that don't get into the specifics of how much was hand drawn and only say that it was a hand drawn film are the sources that are talking about how it's the only hand drawn animated film to receive the
mhm,
Oscar for best animated feature.
yeah,
Um, because they don't get deeper than just saying it was hand drawn.
mhm,
But the sources that I'm seeing that go a little bit deeper than that do bring up the fact that it was like mostly uh hand drawn.
mm. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so what I'm saying is or not saying, what I'm seeing now, with this new source, there's, like, kinda 2 different ideas of using
Yeah.
computer generation. One's used to manipulate hand-drawn
Hmm.
images that add, like, different visual and side effects or special effects, sorry, whereas the second one's animators draw directly on the computer. I think this one takes from hand-drawn images,
Yeah.
which would be the case for when she's running through, um,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
flowers.
yeah. Okay.
There's other parts as well, and I think that's where in my brain, like, completely hand-drawn, you would be correct that there is computer,
We're getting into
um,
the weeds of it.
generate generated
In the
in
grand
there.
scheme of things, the animation's still great. Computer or not, still great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Miyazaki keeps
Spaced.
delivering some great stuff.
I
Yeah.
think we hit most everything. I don't want to hit everything because I do
Okay.
Yeah.
want to encourage people to watch this movie for themselves.
Uh,
I don't know, keep our
maybe with the new
Mhm.
perspective. Yeah.
theories and analysis in mind, I guess.
Uh,
It's very
all right. You
r
can also watch the apparently planned stage adaptation of Spirited
Mhm.
Away that's going to be premiering in Tokyo in 2022. So,
You
Yeah.
could you could watch that.
And it's a book
Um,
or a novel,
is it?
manga, yeah, 'cause that's what it's based on. There's a second one too, they just never did a
yeah,
movie on it. Um, so you can read that as well if you're interested. Definitely a
Do it.
rewatchable movie, one of my favorites by far. Um, I don't know. Yeah.
yep. So
Yeah.
go watch this movie if you haven't before. It doesn't matter that we explained it to you; it's still interesting to watch. Um, Follow us on Twitter at Not Just Any Pod. There you'll find information on this podcast as well as our role playing game stream, Not Just Any RPG. Um, thank you for listening.
Right. Hey, if you're listening to
Go
this, don't you dare forget, don't you dare forget to rate us 5 stars on Spotify if you're listening to this, or on iTunes, or on Apple
Or
Podcasts, wherever
yeah,
you're listening
whatever
to
you're
us.
listening on. Yep.
Please, it makes us happy. Please. Spotify just added the feature to do it, so you better do it. And yeah. Sayonara, Prometheus.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.